Okay, welcome to season 2 with Vox Wins. I've got my friends and colleagues, Anand and Luis, joining me today to talk about their career transitions and how they put their superhero capes on and they navigated some excellent pivots in their career and landed some pretty killer roles. So I'm really excited to talk to both of them today and offer our network tons of advice and vulnerability and lessons on leadership and what their big wins and great lessons have been along the way. So welcome, Anand and Luis. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Pleasure being here.
And Luis, you're ringing in from, where are you calling us from?
I am in Southern California.
Wonderful. And Anand?
I'm in Chicago.
Great. I lived there at one time. Go Cubs, go.
Thank you.
Okay, that big push and pull of change. What do you think, Luis, is driving senior leaders to consider their career transitions, especially in this year and what we've seen?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Kate. I think the big push, it's obvious, it's technology, it's AI, right? There's a lot of push around knowing what's relevant in the business and what, take away all of the noise from AI and really hone in to what's more relevant for the business in terms of technology. I think that's very, very, top of mind for every leader. And I know it's top of mind for me. There's a new AI tool that comes in like every 60 seconds or so it seems. So, navigating through the noise, but also being mindful of what is the best tool that you can bring for your career and your company is top of mind.
That's great. And Anand, I know that a lot of us have dealt with reorgs and restructuring. So how do you feel about this topic?
Yeah, I think technology is definitely ever evolving and pushing change, but also with the economic headwinds and coming from most recently from a retail space, understanding what those challenges look like from a business perspective and what those pressures put on organizations and downsizing and being more efficient and lean. It really makes, in some cases, some really difficult situations happen for better or worse in finding the next best role, either because you're pushed to do that or you can sense that that's the direction that is best, for you and for an organization or for a team. And so I think just learning to be confident in your skills, being agile, being open to change and trying to embrace it versus resist it is really, I feel like, an important skill to have to try to persevere.
And when to recognize when there's been a shift, right? Or when possibly the reorg is coming. Sometimes we don't even know it, right?
Yeah, I think there's certain times that you can see the financial changes in the headwinds and you feel it. And other times it happens more abruptly because you are so focused in on the tasks at hand, which I think is a really good work skill to have. But if you're, whether you're surprised by it or you see it, having an opportunity to have a moment to take a deep breath and know that there are options out there and that there are opportunities that will, eventually appear with persistence.
Kate, if you don't mind me piggyback on that, because I think it's, Anna, you hit it right there. Looking the writing on the wall is so important because we all see the writing on the wall for the most part, right? It's recognizing when that shift is coming. It is so important for leaders to be able to pivot and transition ahead of time and not having that, kind of hit it in you.
Yeah. And you've got that real push and pull of change, right? I mean, I think that in CX, we've always navigated that just from, an industry, no matter what vertical that we're, associated with. So pivoting is always our middle name. I think when it personally affects you like it has, it's difficult. So transferable power skills. I mean, Anand, you transferred from retail CPG to energy. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, again, I think it's a space where having an opportunity to think about areas you can leverage that you either have some experience in or maybe taking a little bit of leap of faith. And for me personally, it was an opportunity just to broaden myself and not to be feeling like I need to continuously leverage my previous experience, but what is the potential that I have into getting into different industries or different ways of thinking. And in particular, for me, coming from a very operations focused area, which was more top heavy versus strategy. And now I'm in a space that is 100% strategy focused and leveraging that experience certainly gives a bit of anxiety of like, okay, is this the right move? And am I going to be capable of this? Versus I have a lot of great experience, and there's also an opportunity for me to flex and use a different side of my brain, right? With an organization that's looking for change, it's looking for a fresh voice, and being that agent of change in the midst of change. And I think that in itself can be energizing, a little scary, but given all the things that are happening from a workplace and economic standpoint, can be really invigorating, right? To approach something with new and optimistic, tendencies, and not being so worried about the uncertainty of like, is this going to be something I'll be able to do, and how long will it last? And just enjoying it for what it is.
For sure. Great point. Luis.
Yeah, I was thinking about this for a minute because I've been in 3 different industries. So I've been in retail, then I moved to nonprofit, which is like 360 from retail. And then I went back to e-commerce, which is, again, 360 to nonprofit. So I think there are a couple of transferable skills that I think they're very, very similar. I think one of them is I come from an operational rigor perspective. It's just having, the data available, having, the foundations available, the processes, the structure. I think that's, very helpful, especially for industries like e-com, where they're, very, very agile, but in that agility, they lose a little bit of the rigor and the processes and the procedures, and also having that the big picture type of mentality. Look at what's relevant right now in your department to what the company's overall goals are. I think that's also a transferable skill that I think it works in every industry.
Okay, so not how did you think, because you're both successfully in new roles, how did you reframe and position your skills and expertise with new industries or different industries that you wanted to potentially pivot to? What was your strategy around that, Anand?
Yeah, and I think for me, it was an opportunity to invest in myself and to get some outside perspective, right? It was twofold for me, getting a resume writer to really help me take that next iteration of like what experience I have and how best can I communicate that to be more opportunistic with any opportunities that came up. And the second piece of that was to get an opportunity with a career coach to really help leverage and bring out some of the things that I had inside of me that I didn't feel like I probably did, or to be able to articulate them in ways that I hadn't had an opportunity to do that. And so thinking about that lens of having conversations from the outside, whether it's resume writing, whether it's career coaching, having someone that's being able to have a different perspective on what I've done and what I could do. In some ways, it was very cathartic to be able to kind of like discuss that with someone not so close to like my inner circle, and to say, these are all the things that I've done, and these are all the things that I feel like I could do, or maybe things that I haven't considered. And that for me was really helpful and insightful. It didn't give me answers like, this is exactly what I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
But it really opened up some opportunities for me to consider like what could unfold as I had those discussions.
Well, it's always good to trust your horoscope sometimes.
Yes. I can't argue with that.
Right. When we like it.
Yes.
Luis, what about you?
Yeah, I have to echo Anand. I mean, it's having a career coach is so important. I truly undervalue their work at some points prior to this. I never really believe in that. But having someone that can coach you, that can be there, that can give you outside perspective on your not just your resume. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to see? Where does your values align in terms of your next company? In terms of your next career move. All of that is so important when you are trying to pivot and are in that uncertainty moment, because it does take a little bit of time, especially when you hit with a reorg for the first time. It takes a little bit of time for you to kind of realize that you need that outside help and that North Star. So it's very, very important from a career coaching standpoint.
On the career coach topic, I always found that career coaches, the ones that I know and that I've spoken to, clarity is a really big part of the process for that person that's looking to get hired. How did you find clarity in the process with yourself and the career coach?
The clarity comes, with you finding your tier one companies that you really envision yourself to be in, or that you want to aspire to kind of join in, but aligning those companies with your own values. And that's the exercise that I went with my career coach: is where are your values? Where do you see yourself? What kind of environment do you see yourself working on? And then look for those type of companies that you can pursue, even if the roles doesn't exist at any point. It's having that alignment. For me, it was an eye opening, because instead of mass applying for everything that comes your way,
Yeah.
you become more intentional about aligning your values with the companies that you kind of envision yourself to be working with.
Yeah, I mean, Luis makes such a good point about like being true to your values. And for me, and those conversations, my career coach was, leveraging confidence without compromise, right? Like at this stage, when you're experienced and you've got a couple of decades or more of experience, right? And you know what is true to you, the way that you operate and the values that you hold from a business and from, an equity standpoint. I think learning to be able to be flexible, but you don't have to like change who you are in order to try to fit a potential opportunity, and feeling in some cases like desperate because you're like, I need to find the next opportunity, right? Having confidence without compromising and leveraging on your values, I think is a really important piece that Luis referenced.
Yeah, I think there's a healthy balance too. Like, it's the TikTok doom scroll. Don't do it,
Yeah.
and I would say with the job search and applying, for sure, that isn't great. So good. Thank you. Okay. So bold moves. I mean, both of you have made bold moves. You've leveled up, you've changed industries, and I'm sure that your reporting structure has changed, maybe what you knew from before versus now. Is that accurate with both of your situations, that you're within a different part of the organization now?
Yeah, I would say so, especially for my standpoint, of shifting from something that was more operations heavy to now strategy, right? I'm no longer managing a large team, right? I have a lot of opportunities to have peer-to-peer contact and thought leadership, and it's more discussion and relationship based sort of methodology. And so I think from an org perspective, like it's not only a new industry, but a new company, but also a new way of like having conversations with people that I wasn't having at a high level of frequency before. And in some cases more in depth about CX strategy and what that looks like from a transformation perspective for a company versus getting into the things that I felt more comfortable with, like from a metric standpoint and having tighter guardrails, right? So yeah, for me, that's been an opportunity, but also a bit of a pause to say like, okay, like, am I approaching this correctly? Am I envisioning things the way that this role is championed to be or not? And so having a little bit of pump the brakes at times to make sure that I feel good about the direction that I'm headed, or that I'm providing the cross collaboration that's intended for this particular role.
Good. What about you, Luis?
Yeah, I will probably echo that as well. My previous role has been director level, and as a director level, sometimes you kind of silo yourself into what operational you have to do, or anything within your department. Being a VP, you have to cross collaborate into different areas of the business that drives, impacts such as retention or marketing in terms of the industry that I'm in, and bringing that voice of the customer and that pain points to life, so that the company can make more informed decisions about strategies, about where do they want to go and how do they want to take the customer experience at large. So yeah, the scope is definitely different to what I'm used to. So it's a different challenge for me this time around.
Did you ever find during the interview process that you were like, wow, I don't think I like this. I don't think this is where I want to be. Did you find yourselves in that process? Or do you believe that because you had so much clarity around where you were going, that you only said yes to the places that aligned with who you are and what you wanted?
Oh, I do have a lot of horror stories in terms of interviews. So don't even get me started. But yeah, to your point, there was a lot of misalignment between what it was posted and what it was discussed during the interview process. So that misalignment comes in very frequently nowadays, especially to the point that sometimes you go through the different interviews and there's no alignment between the first and the second and the third. So you're like, okay, wait a minute, what is the exact
Yeah.
role and the exact scope of the role here? So yeah, there was a lot of misalignment, but I would probably say it was about 60-40 for me. 60% that were completely misaligned, 40% that were very, very aligned to what I was looking for and what the role, described in the posting. So yeah.
I think I was still finding myself through the process, right?
Yeah.
I kind of had
Yeah.
an idea, but then also the misalignment Luis described, I would venture, I guess mine was maybe about more 50-50 as far as those conversations went. And in some ways it was a little bit discouraging. In other ways, it was also a way for me to reframe, like, is this the area that I would really want to be in? And if not, like, it's okay. The level of disappointment doesn't need to match that, right? So it's okay. Yeah. So for me, it was kind of evolving as I was going through the discussions from interviews and opportunities and even just like networking, right? There were some times where like conversations were like interesting, but not necessarily productive. But I didn't hold myself to feeling like every connection had to like materialize into something that was productive. Because you just don't know when you might cross paths with someone else or there's someone knows someone else that is potentially at an organization that's looking for a specific skill set that you bring.
I always love the interview process on both sides because I always want to learn something. So whether it's the industry I know I don't want to be a part of, or it's an industry I do, or an idea, or the person, that's really important to me. And I have always found that the more personal someone can make it by knowing me and understanding me has been something I've walked away with really being impressed by. So I know that on one of our previous conversations, we talked about, hey, how do you leverage LinkedIn? How do you go full force? And I think you both outside of LinkedIn even had some great follow-up and strategies that you used. Luis, would you like to start with how you went after that and leveraged some of your networking tools?
Yeah, there are a lot of LinkedIn gurus nowadays, right? So you have to like pick and choose what works best for you. But one of the things that really works best for me was when I was working with a career coach, and she pointed out to me and she said, you know what, your first degree connections are great, but building that, it's like a waterfall method. So having the conversation with your first degrees and say, hey, listen, would you mind introducing me to 5 of your second degree connections? And just open that conversation so that you open. And then once you get to those second degrees from that person, then do the same approach. Would you mind introducing me to 5 of your networks that are not within my network? So it's kind of like building that network within your first degrees and second degrees network that really work with me. I build a lot of connections through that approach because your first degrees are the ones that are going to open the doors for you. There's a lot of backdoor channeling that you can do, but in this era of like just people inviting you to connect for like sales reasons or anything like that, it's very hard to come through and just build connections that way. So it's just leveraging your first connections. It was a better way for me to go by.
What a great idea. Thank you for sharing. Anand, what about you?
Yeah, I think for me it was an interesting pivot of showing up at more in-person events, especially being in Chicago in a market that had
Oh, sure.
so much diversity of just different industries, whether it was like trade functions or networking dinners, or even just upskilling regarding AI and technology, right? Those conversations, as Lise mentioned, like changing, it feels like almost hour by hour, but at least week to month over week over month. For me, it was an opportunity to show up in person and to try to build some relationships outside of the online and LinkedIn space. Again, what I mentioned before is like, not feeling like putting too much pressure on myself, like everything needs to be productive. Like some were really great and some weren't as productive. But in each ones, I learned something and I met someone interesting. And even if it was not necessarily a connection that I would continue to move forward with, it still gave me sort of some intel about what was happening, right, from an industry perspective. And to just build additional confidence about like, yeah, this is a journey that I'm headed down, and it helped me sharpen the direction that I wanted to go in the end.
I like that. Thank you. I know we talked about building resilience during change and like really feeling vulnerable. Like, wow, this is like, I've never been in this position before. I don't really know where to start. This isn't easy. And how long did it take for you to really acknowledge that with yourself and then take action?
How long did it take me? It took me more than I would have wished for. Being someone that was impacted for the first time in a reorg, to be completely transparent. So, I was in my denial scenario for a couple of months until, I decided to take action. And that's something that intentionally you have to do better as you get more experience. But it took me about 2 to 3 months, potentially 4 months into realizing that I need to get out of my victim state and go into being more intentional about my, looking out for my next opportunity. So, yeah.
Yeah, I had a former mentor, leader, boss, and she said, "Pity City is a fun place to visit, but it's not a good place to live."
Well
That's
said.
Great. You can drive up, but you got to drive right back out of there. Anand, what about you?
Yeah, I would echo, I think, what Elise has mentioned as well, right? I think at the beginning there was some denial and like, okay, this can't be happening, or like it'll go away, and things will be okay. And probably after about 2 to 3 months, I realized that, yeah, this was a direction that I needed to start moving towards. And I would much prefer to have, if of all possible, an opportunity to make that decision on my own terms versus not. And we don't always get a say in that. But starting that journey sooner than later is a benefit. And then after that, about 9 months to really get into a space to find the next opportunity, so the better part of a year, but the first few months were a little bit of a slow burn to be like,
sure.
Yeah, is this the direction I need to go? Do I need to be looking for the next opportunity, or can things will get better? Is it okay to stick it out?
Great perspectives. Thank you. So in all of this journey, you've networked, you've talked to people, you've interviewed. I mean, you probably know more about CX than, half the universe right now in our world. So what trends do you see coming, and how do you stay relevant? So what trends do you see coming or currently evolving very fast in CX, and how are you remaining relevant?
Yeah. And I think the elephant in the room is always the technology piece, AI, right? That's ever evolving. And I think that in itself is, if you're working in a CX space, it's in some cases hard to keep up with and know what's relevant and what's the shiny object in the room, and to be able to try to distill that down into what's meaningful for a particular organization or particular role that could help improve customer journeys and voice of the customer. And I think the flip side of that is also with leadership that don't maybe fully understand what's happening with AI. Like, why aren't we using it? Or should we be using it, without understanding what needs to happen from like a fundamental standpoint? So that way you're investing in technology that actually improves CX, not just sounds like the hood ornament that's going to make the, fashion statement of the year. So technology, I think, is a really big piece. And I think understanding what is happening from an economic standpoint of how customers are engaging with brands and services, right, across the board, regardless of this industry or segment that you're in, because as consumer behaviors is changing and how they interact, not only with technology, with brands and services, I think having an opportunity to try to like know your audience before you start talking about what technology is best.
Yeah, technology obviously is the next trend, and like I said at the beginning, right? Like, it looks like everything is like a new shiny object is being launched every hour. But I think the next experience that you need to like really hone in as a leader is the change management aspect, right? Sometimes you have to put the brakes, and that's okay. You have to look at it from a change management perspective. And how do you protect your team from the constant changes, not just from technology, but from processes, and different things, different directions that the company wants to go? And how do you help the team prioritize those? So change management for me is super important. And in this era of like depersonalization, because as we kind of ramp up technology, you kind of tend to depersonalize the experience so much. Having that emotional intelligence to say, no, we're not going to just go with AI. We're going to leverage also the human talent that we have. And we're probably going to automate certain things, but our core members, we need to treat them differently than just with a bot. So having that emotional intelligence to couple with your AI strategy is something that it's very valuable nowadays.
Yes, that was my favorite, the AI strategy. I'm definitely a creator, and I love to set the vision, and I really thrive around that. And I found myself often, and I'm sure you did as well, you've got to have that great balance of, especially in the luxury space, of when is the bot relevant and when is it not. And, I just posted something recently even about the basket size and building that. And if we over engineer this with AI, we're finding that the industries are finding that the basket size isn't getting bigger. It might be getting more efficient, but it's not getting bigger. And so it's really that push and pull, I think, of like, what does CX mean as we're evolving with AI? So I don't know. I love those discussions. I'm sure you both are experiencing that in different ways. So future proofing. I want to know about this because I don't think anything's future proof, right? I mean, I think the world is changing so fast around us. It's hard to actually use those words. But if you had to give advice for people in CX, how to future proof or prepare for change and uncertainty, I would say this area of the business has been impacted heavily in 2025. What advice would you give that group?
So I think, change is inevitable, and adapting to that, while it's difficult, I think it's important to do at varying levels. And you don't have to be perfect at it, but just being more present about what's happening around you, and preparing yourself for sort of that plan B or that plan C, with what happens either from a career standpoint or even from what's happening in a particular role or an industry. I think being adaptive to what you're hearing from not only inside an organization, but also your peers, having discussions like this where you're able to listen and hear from different industries and other like-minded individuals that are passionate about CX, to know what's happening and how they're adapting to change and learning and growing together. I found a lot of great conversations from people that you might think of just being competitors, but are really great about sharing knowledge and best practices, without giving away company secrets, right? And I think that's really nice when you're able to come across people that are willing to share that type of knowledge and to, in some cases, just pressure test what potential changes are ahead or ways to pivot, and give you areas to consider in the future to try to be maybe not necessarily future proof, but more prepared for the future.
Mm-hmm. Pivot, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think being adaptable more than anything, it's the name of the game, to be completely honest with you. Being adaptable, having that change management mentality, and build your network. I cannot emphasize how much and how important it is for you to not just build your network, but nurture your network. Stay in touch with the people that you network and you connected at either a personal level, professional level, and stay relevant to them as well, right? Through either making a suggestion, a recommendation, and provide that added value to your network. It's so important to stay top of mind. I always tell my daughter, as she's going through college in the next 2 years, you're going to build so many great friendships in there. But the key part of it is making sure that you don't move away from your network that you're going to build in college. Those are going to be a network that are going to be the next CEOs, the next COOs, the next doctors, and you need to keep those network and those connections fresh. So I cannot emphasize networking as part of staying relevant.
I would say I wish I knew this when I was, that age, is the whole idea of personal branding and, what that means. I mean, I think our parents told us that in so many words, but like didn't use that, those words. And I think that's really important. And it sounds like that's what we're all talking about, really, is how we built that. And congratulations to you both. I love that you both have landed new roles, leveled up, new industries, and able to maintain your equity in yourself. I think that's important. Okay, so I'm looking down because I have some questions that I created at the end of the call. We always like to do a little rapid fire Q&A. I would like to know, Anand, did anyone give you a piece of advice that completely reframed your approach?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think I mentioned previously a quote that came to me from a friend that was, be yourself so people looking for you can find you. And I think being authentic, right, especially getting caught up in the midst of sea of change that's happening, it's hard not to want to try to figure out, like, do I need to evolve? And I think up to a certain point, but I think being reframed in a place of like having confidence of who I am, and that in itself will help me find the next place.
Great. Okay, Luis, what mistakes did you make early on that you'd warn others to avoid?
Especially when you're looking for your next opportunity. Give yourself time for yourself. Don't spend 8 hours, 10 hours a day looking for your next opportunity. Be very disciplined about, creating a set schedule. These are the hours that I'm going to use for this. These are the hours that I'm going to use for my mental health, for anything that brings you joy. Because I didn't do that, at a certain point, and I was actually being burned out just by looking for my next opportunity.
Sure.
So I
Yeah.
had to move away from that, right, and create that structure for just my own sanity. So
That's great advice. How, Anand, how did you explain your career transition story to others, especially those you were interviewing with? Why are you looking?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I think anytime that you're having an interview, right? And I think for me, it was really about being opportunistic, right? And looking at what my trajectory has been and what it can be, and being a part of an organization and a team and leadership that is interested and sees the value from a CX perspective, and something that I'm passionate about. The phrase that I would often use is, like, you don't have to motivate me about CX. Like, I'm already coming in with that. I don't have to manufacture that. And so I can be the next person in this organization to help take that to the next step of what you're looking for, and learning and growing without having to be poked and prodded to move in a particular direction. Yeah.
It's great. It's great. Luis, during the interview process, did you ever feel this pressure? You had to just prove yourself all over again? And how did you handle it?
Oh, always. And not only that, it was a lot of imposter syndrome as well, right? So how do I prove myself? But also, am I worth it to be here in this moment? So, there was a point in time where I just say to myself, you need to be authentic to an point. You need to be very authentic about, where you're coming, what you can bring to the table, and be yourself about it. Obviously, there's certain things that, you need to say, and how you say it really, really is important. But be yourself, right? Don't try to fake it till you make it. I really don't like that. It's how you need to be yourself around other people, and I think that comes a long way in the interview process, especially if the interview process brings a lot of conversational topics instead of just using the star method of other methods that are very rigid.
Oh my gosh.
In mind. Don't get me started on that. But yeah, so just be yourself, be authentic.
Okay, here's some fun ones. Anand, is it soda or pop?
It's pop.
Luis, Coke or Pepsi?
Oh, Coke. Is that even a question?
Anand, East or West?
West.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you're in the middle of yeah, so you kind of, okay, got it. Got it. That's great. Okay, Luis, hot or cold?
That's a hard one. Depend on my mood, but cold usually.
I know I'm always hot, so I always just say hot. Okay, well, this concludes our season 2 Vox Wins with our career pivoters, Anand and Luis. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to staying in contact with you two, and I'm really proud that you're a part of the network. And as always, when you win, we win.